Well, guys, here they are, the freshwater river prawns. Now, these guys are still really small, but they're known as giant freshwater river prawns because they get freaking huge. They're gonna get huge. And they seem to be settling in quite well. They went through a acclimation process of about 3-4 hours in the bag with the drip acclimation, and then after the acclimation I felt was sufficient, I just let the bag kind of tumble down and they just come out on their own. So that way, I'm not scooping them out. Normally, I wouldn't mix the water from inside the bag with a tank, but this is a special case. I tested the water ahead of time and I did a live stream about this, but I'm happy to report that when I tested the bag, the TDS was around like 580. The TDS in here is around 850, and I know that's still a huge ways off, but the reason the TDS is so high in here is because the water, this is my well water, has a crap ton of calcium in it, which normally for invertebrates is a bonus because it helps with their molting process and their exoskeleton. The GH is not too far off, and I can read you, I'm going to tell you the numbers, and you're going to think that's actually quite a ways away, and you would be right. But based on my experience with my Neocaridina davidi shrimp surviving in here, those parameters are way off for them too, but they did perfectly fine in here, and I've actually that's the preferred water that I breed them in. It's 16 degrees of hardness that they were shipped in. It's 25 degrees of general hardness in the tank. The pH is like, if I recall, is like 8.2 in the water. The pH, I'm sorry, 8.2 in the bag. The water in here is about 8.4, so not a huge pH swing. What else did I test? I didn't test the carbonate hardness, but carbonate hardness is really high up in here too, so at least it'll be relatively stable. Not a lot of fluctuations go on in this tank. So all in all, the reason why I didn't do like a 12-hour acclimation or something like that is because the water was similar enough that I didn't feel it was completely necessary. And I'm sorry, I'm not giving you guys enough eye candy here. There were at least 12 freshwater river prawns, and the thing about them is, as you can see, they're only about an inch long right now. They are very much transparent, so they are a little hard to spot. They are in here, and that's a good thing. I was worried that the water flow in this tank might be too much for them to handle, because as you can see, I've got 2 bubblers because I need more aeration in this tank for a good reason. The temperature in this tank has to be at least 80 degrees, honestly. That's just how these particular species are. They need the extra heat, and when the temperature of the water is higher, the amount of oxygen that the water can retain is lower, so aeration equals good. And the filter here, the Penplex Cascade 1500, I think that's around 350 gallons per hour, going from left to right, so that's a lot of flow. But these are river prawn. Their species should be somewhat used to or capable of handling the flow, and it seems like thus far they are perfectly fine with it, which is good. Now, I'm trying to find some more of these little guys. They're scattered about, and like I said, they're still small and they're very transparent, so they're hard to find. But if they do die, I imagine they'll be like shrimp and they'll turn pink and they'll be very easy to see. Speaking of dying, let's hope that doesn't happen. But you guys gotta remember, this is my very first time dealing with prawns. Now, there is an upside. These are wild type prawns. It's not like these are heavily inbred shrimps like I usually have that are, isolating genetics for a certain color. These are wild creatures, and normally wild creatures are just more robust. But that doesn't necessarily mean I can just, be all willy-nilly about it. I still don't know if these parameters will be good enough for them. Time will tell. Obviously 24, 48, 72, those hours are the big critical ones, because if they start dying off immediately, well, if they started dying off immediately, that would be an indication of a huge problem. But they obviously have not died off, and in fact, they've been eating as well. I put food in there, and you can see food is scattered about because I don't know where they are exactly, but they'll get to it when they get to it. I've seen them eat the food, so I know that they know that it is food. There's just not a lot of eye candy right now, and that's because they're young. When they're older, they get these huge blue claws, and well, not just their claws, their arms. They're massive. These creatures are huge when they get bigger. Like you see right now, it's like the width of my finger, but by the time they're full size, it'll be from here all the way to here. I mean, that's a huge invertebrate. So, you know, it's just going to be one of those things where I've got to observe and see, adjust, and be prepared for the worst. But I'm hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, you never know. You know, with my hard water, you know, directly in here, I mean, obviously this is a cycled tank. This tank has been cycled for freaking ever. And it's got nice aged water for the most part. We got the duckweed doing what duckweed does, which is absorbing pretty much excess nutrients and a lot of harmful stuff. You know, duckweed and other floating plants are used in certain water treatment facilities just to suck out heavy metals and stuff. So it helps keep the water clean on a completely different level, a different kind of filtration that you know, canister filter's just not going to provide. So the water should be clean, despite the fact that it is very hard with calcium. You know I'm going into all these details, and I don't think you guys really care about these little details about the parameters, but this is also a little log for me and for other people that might be wanting to get into the freshwater prawn situation, because having a document of exactly what everything is right now is kind of important, because this is the first 24 hours that they will be in here, which is the crucial time for their adaptation to this tank. You know, it's do or die. That is the situation, and it's a little difficult because there's not really a ton of information out there. Because these really aren't typical aquarium creatures. You know, with my shrimps, you can find, you know, websites dedicated to the species. You can be reading about that species and their parameters for days. But with these particular shrimps, there's not really a ton of it out there. They're obviously grown and cultivated for the food industry. They're used in a lot of Asian food dishes, but you know that's not what we're going for here. And those farms that raise them, I can't imagine that their water conditions are going to be better than mine, given the fact that they have large versions of these prawns in tight proximity to each other in a less controlled environment than this. But I'm still wary. And I'm still kind of like on edge with these guys, because I really do want this to work, but there's just no guarantee that it will. Now, what am I going to do when they get bigger and they start to breed? Well, if they do breed, which would be awesome if they do, the offspring do have a larval stage that requires brackish water. If I want to breed them continuously, I will have to convert one of my 10-gallon sponge filter aquariums into a brackish water aquarium, which would mean that would make it my first ever brackish water tank. I'd have to get more equipment to do that, but the thing is, these guys are obviously post-larval, and they are absolutely 100% capable of being in fresh water. So that is pretty much everything that I'm dealing with right now. it's really just now a matter of waiting, seeing how they do, letting them grow, letting them molt, feeding them properly, and just hoping for the best as I continue to check parameters and see what happens. Hopefully these guys grow, because from what I'm told, their growth rate is actually quite fast. They could get to full size in approximately 8 to 9 months, which that is a huge amount of size to grow in such a short time. So I'm hoping that's kind of what happens, but you know, once again, first time ever doing this, not a ton of information on these guys, hoping for the best, doing the best I can with the information that I have. So, as I promised, guys, I'm doing the freshwater prawn project. It begins now. Let's hope everything goes to plan.